up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing strange and somewhat innocuous cursed objects and the Dybbuk box. So many of you really seem to enjoy the video that I put out last week about haunted mirrors and how they might be, at least sometimes, portals to alternate dimensions and other worlds and or realms. With that in mind, I thought it would be cool to discuss with you all today some other kinds of cursed objects, some of which are very well known, and see what you think about all of it. Honestly, guys, I just try to go with the flow as to what you guys may want to see, and I do that by looking in the comments. But honestly, I am always surprised by the comments of what you guys really like and what you guys don't like so much. So pretty much every week I'm taking a gamble. So I hope you like this one. The thing about this particular topic, though, is that I know that just about anything can be cursed, and that's the problem when it comes to one of my most favorite things to do, and one of the things that I know a lot of you guys like to do, and that's thrifting and even visiting, just visiting museums. You have to understand attachments can jump very easily from one person to another and from an inanimate object to a person, etc. Though the latter there is a bit difficult depending on the energy or the entity you're dealing with in that particular situation. Think about it. If you are a demonic or lower vibrational entity and you've been feeding off of the same person for years and have turned them into a complete and total shell of themselves, how's it going to be when you finally come across someone who has their act together, is spiritually aligned, and living their best lives? It's going to be like a game for them, and they're going to do everything in their power to get themselves some fresh meat, so to speak, and for lack of better terms. I've already gotten a bit off track, as I normally do, but I feel like that needed to be said. I've often talked, mainly in my live streams, about the fact that you can take your own emotions, feelings, and energy and discharge them into something else, like a piece of jewelry or a knickknack or something like that. You can do that unintentionally as well, and in fact, a lot of people do, and that's how you end up with things around your home that seem cursed or possessed, and really it's just your own lower vibrational or negative energy having been put into it completely by accident by you or someone, you know, in the house too. Of course, I will then explain what to do with and how to cleanse the object you may have just infected, but not that many people realize that when they're transferring their pain and lower vibrational energy into something else, like maybe a doll. Like, they don't realize they're doing it. And they also don't realize it does need to be cleansed, or it will sit there and stagnate. So say you're lying in bed with your favorite stuffed toy and holding onto it and crying, maybe praying or something like that, and voila, you've now transferred a part of yourselves into the inanimate objects. Since you don't know that you've done that, you can't possibly be in a position to release and cleanse it, and it ends up some years later in the thrift shop, or some poor, unfortunate, unknowing, and unwitting fool buys it for $1 and ends up being terrorized by a haunted doll for who knows how long. That's how it works in the most simplistic way I can possibly put it and explain it to you. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today in the first part. Eventually, more than likely, the object is found to be the cause of all of the activity and perhaps even the suffering the humans in its wake are going through, and it's deemed cursed and destroyed or locked away. However, that isn't always the right thing to do, and it doesn't always help or work. You can't just release an entity or this type of energy out into the open air, either just for it to have the opportunity to roam free until it finds its next unsuspecting victim. You can't do that. When we feel enough pain or enough rage, enough of any lower vibrational feelings, we inadvertently transfer it, and that's when it all becomes a significant problem. So, what happens when the human or humans involved realize that the object itself is the issue and the cause of everything that's been going on? Well, that does depend on the individual case, but that's what I wanted to talk with you guys about here today. Most of the time, if you're actively looking to find random cursed items, then an old museum is your best bet on where to go looking. Honestly, it's the most random and mundane thing sometimes that can be cursed or haunted, for lack of better words, and I've discussed 10 cursed items in a past different video. With that in mind, I want you all to settle in, grab yourself something to drink, jump into bed, and snuggle up while you watch or listen to this. Who knows, maybe that blankie you've had since you were a baby has a demonic entity attached to it, or that dolly your great-grandma gave you for your communion holds the energy from the first time you got your little heart broken. I don't know where I was going with that there when I wrote this. Honestly, and like I said, you never know. So let's start with an allegedly haunted wedding dress and jump right in. In the early 1800s, a girl named Anna Baker came from a very wealthy and well-to-do family. It's said that in 1849, Anna fell in love and was head over heels for a man she had recently come into contact with. They fell in love really quick back in the day. However, the man was out of her class, lower than her, apparently, and was nothing more than a lowly iron worker. Because of that, her family forbade her to marry him and threatened to cut her off financially should she choose to disobey them. Of course, Anna and her beau were young and in love, and as most of us know, the world couldn't stop young love from pursuing its destiny, and the pair went about planning their wedding anyway. Of course, they did so in secret, and Anna went and bought a gorgeous and luxurious wedding dress for the occasion. Well, at least that's what it would have been considered at the time, because I've seen pictures and it's kind of frumpy. There's really nothing to it. It's very covered, and hey, it was the style of the day. I'm not judging you, Anna. Of course, her father found out about the secret and the plan to elope and get married anyway, and he somehow stopped it from happening altogether. Anna was devastated and spent the rest of her life in mourning for her one true love. She never married and spent her life as a spinster, hating her father for what he had done and wishing she could have the freedom to have married the iron worker. When she died in 1914, she was said to have been an extremely bitter and ornery old woman, and she was also a recluse. Anna's old house has since been turned into a museum, mainly due to her family's name and wealth and the roles they all played in the town where she had lived her whole life, in the same home as the family she scorned so badly. Yes, she lived with them in perpetuity. The wedding dress she bought, she had actually kept, and it's now hung up in her bedroom in that house, which anyone who pays a visit to the museum can pay to go and see. The people who work there and many others have claimed that the dress moves around all on its own, and that it's a sign that Anna's spirit is still very restless. Now, as most of you know, I talk a lot in my live streams about when I get visits from spirits, when I'm doing nothing more than innocently watching a news report, show, or documentary about their lives. And without getting too much into detail, I'll just say Anna isn't completely earthbound, but she is present enough that she hasn't been able to reunite with her one and only true love, and is indeed very restless because of that fact, and she is still a very sad spirit. Next up is a cursed chair, and I'm pretty sure I covered this one in the last cursed objects video, but that was like 3 years ago. Go back and watch that. I will put the link for it in the description box, but this one always just fascinated me because it's like a chair, really? A chair? But this goes to show what I was saying before. It could literally be anything. It could be a freaking rock. This allegedly cursed object is also kept in a museum. The Thirsk Museum to be exact, and that's located in the United Kingdom. The chair is said to have once belonged to a man named Thomas Busby, and the reason why it's alleged to be haunted is because he murdered his father-in-law as the unknowing man sat in the chair. He eventually succumbed to his injuries right there in the chair and died. It turned out that the chair was Thomas's favorite, and his father-in-law merely sat in the chair for the last time without gaining Thomas's permission first. In 1702, Thomas was set to be hanged for the murder, but was granted his one final wish before he was killed by the state. He requested that he be able to go to a local pub, his favorite one, have a beer and a meal, all while sitting in that beloved chair that he had murdered someone while they sat in it. Somewhat unbelievably, or maybe not, depending where you come from, that final request and wish was granted. Just as he was about finished with his beer and meal, as he stood up to walk to where he would be hanged, he loudly proclaimed to the whole pub, and with what I imagine was a lot of conviction and anger, that anyone who sat in that particular chair from that point on would meet an untimely end. It said that the proclamation worked, and aside from people claiming to have had full-blown heart attacks while sitting in the chair thereafter, others who were brave enough to put the curse to the test died in freak accidents and many other sorts of untimely deaths. The curse of this random chair was allegedly so intense that in 1972, it was donated to the above-mentioned museum, where it was hung from the ceiling and stopped midway between the ceiling and the ground to make sure that no one would ever sit in it again. That was pretty smart. I mean, aside from removing the curse from the chair, pretty good idea, I guess. It's simple, but gets the job done. So there's another very ordinary looking and unimposing cursed object at the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh, Scotland, but this particular object is ancient and dates all the way back to the year 350 and is said to represent an ancient fertility goddess. Nowadays, it's referred to as the Goddess of Death figure because of how intensely cursed it seems to be. The statue was dug up in 1878 in Lem, Cyprus, and it was named the Woman of Lem. From the moment it was unearthed, it's said to have brought death to everyone who owned it, starting with the first guy to ever have it as a part of his collection. His name was Lord Elfont, and right after he acquired the statue, 7 people in his family died in quick succession, one right after the other. The same thing happened to the next person who was said to have owned it, a man by the name of Ivor Minucci, and then every single family of everyone who has ever owned it since, ending with Sir Alan Beaverbrook. He died right after obtaining ownership of the statue, as did his wife and their 2 daughters. After that, given all the deadly history attached to and surrounding the Goddess of Death figure, it was donated to a museum by Beaverbrook's 2 surviving sons. The curator of that museum died shortly after receiving the item as well. Ever since, the statue has been kept behind thick glass in order to hopefully stop anyone else from falling victim to her. Dana and Craig Newkirk own and operate the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult, and they have obtained many allegedly haunted and decidedly paranormal objects throughout the years. I wanted to discuss a few of the most unique items in their collection since we are talking about unassuming objects in this video. One of the first one that comes to mind when I think about this particular place is an old iron pike that's about 1.5 feet in length, and that was originally found in another very well-known and haunted spot, the Crescent Mine in Oregon in the United States. While no one can be absolutely sure exactly what the item is or what it was used for, or why it's cursed really, many people have speculated that it's actually a drill and that its owner was possibly crushed to death during one of the many cave-ins at that particular site. It's come to be known as the Ghost Mine Drill and has been the subject of many paranormal investigations. One of the most mind-blowing pieces of evidence ever collected around that drill is an EVP of a raggedy old man's voice very clearly saying, quote, "Tell Jennifer I'm sorry," end quote. Shadow figures are constantly seen lurking around and looming over the item, and I'm not 100% decided yet, but this just might be my favorite on this list, as it does seem to be the most innocuous out of all of them. A drill? Is it like a drill bit? I don't even know what an iron pike is, so comments please. There's another object known to be haunted and allegedly cursed that comes from the same traveling paranormal museum owned and operated by the Newkirks that we are going to discuss here today, and that's the conjuring drum. It supposedly once belonged to a family in Detroit, Michigan, who were known for being very high up practitioners in the voodoo magic / religion. The family had spoken about the item, and allegedly they got rid of it because they realized it was cursed and had an attachment, because they said they brought an entity they will only refer to as the criminal back to life, or to life in 3D, however you want to put it, and once that happened, they just couldn't take it anymore. These voodoo practitioners couldn't take the criminal entity anymore. So with that being said, I decided in this video to just do overviews of all of the objects so we can talk about more than just a couple, and I wanted to get to the Dybbuk box as well. But just know that this is one that I do intend on diving very deeply into, because it just fascinated me and it kind of hit that sweet spot for me of I need to find out more about this. It really does intrigue me, the entity that they gave the name the criminal to. It just sounds fascinating. But for now, though, that's all we know about that particular conjuring drum. Another item from the Traveling Paranormal Museum that no one would look twice at if they didn't know the history behind it is a 200-year-old wooden idol that's said to have come from the Congo. Somehow, it was found stuffed in an attic amid other old artifacts and overflowing boxes in Dayton, Ohio. After finding the idol, the owner of the home had chronic and reoccurring, terrifyingly horrific nightmares. So they brought it to a museum, and someone there who obviously had a sense of humor nicknamed it Billy. It's known to make EVP equipment either malfunction or stop working altogether, and when people are near it, they hear loud and very guttural screams and or groans. Also traveling with the same paranormal museum is a hollowed out monkey skull known as the Tibetan begging bowl. It's said to have absolutely terrorized the original man who owned it, and once it somehow fell into the possession of his grandson, who instantly started experiencing serious poltergeist activity in his own home, but he quickly realized the cause of the phenomenon and gave the bull to the museum. That's all crazy and everything, but I think just having a hollowed out monkey skull around anywhere is odd enough, but then again, that's just me. Let's move on now to an object in the West Virginia National Museum of the Paranormal. This is somewhere I really do want to visit one day, hopefully soon, because they have an amazing and very eclectic collection of paranormal and allegedly cursed and or haunted items. They have tons of dolls too, which are basically some of my favorite paranormal things to look at because I love getting to know the spirits attached to them. Well, for the most part at least, and even if it is rather creepy to you all, I really do enjoy me a haunted doll. But the object that I think is the most unusual is an allegedly haunted Dr. Seuss book. Yes, you heard me right. I said a Dr. Seuss book. The family who eventually donated it to the museum said that whenever their daughter would read the book, children's voices would whisper to her in the dark and she would feel overwhelmingly like she was being watched in her own bedroom. A paranormal investigator somehow looked into the history of the book and discovered that it had come from inside of a house where there had been a quadruple homicide, and a red stain on the book's cover is said to be a blood stain as well. It sits in a glass display case, and the last person to read it was the family, the little girl of the family who sent it there. And for those of you who, like me, were curious, it is a copy of The Foot Book by Dr. Seuss. That is the book that it is. So, now that I got you all warmed up with this collection of weird objects that are said to be cursed, and let me know which one was your favorite out of all the ones listed there, I want to talk about an almost infamous object that's said to be cursed in such a way that anyone who comes into contact with it is basically doomed if they don't act right. However, before we get into that, I just want to say that there is no one way for an inanimate object to become haunted or to become cursed. It honestly depends on the object. It depends on if there's magic being used. It depends on the spirit. It depends. When dealing with things like dolls, for instance, there's a chance that one of the previous owners were so attached to the thing in life, possibly died as a child, and therefore stayed connected to that comfort item through death because more than likely they didn't fully cross over or cross over at all. It could also be that someone specifically conjures a demon or some other entity to trap it inside of the body of the doll or toy in order to breathe some sort of life in it until it can find itself a human body. Now, while obviously the Child's Play movies are not real, the premise of what's his name, Charles Lee Ray, and how he transferred his soul into Chucky until he could try to get a hold of Andy. I don't know if y'all ever saw that movie. That's a real thing. That does happen. The amount of power it would take to maintain something like that and to keep that going, you would have to have someone outside of you do it. Like, if you transferred your own soul into the body of the doll, like, someone would have to be on the outside maintaining that. You wouldn't be able to do it from the doll, but, you know, schematics, whatever. Be quiet, Gemma. Gemma. Always getting off track. I just want you guys to know, I want you guys to know the truth about a lot of these things. And I feel like the truth isn't portrayed a lot of the time. It's dramatized and dramatized, if that's a word. I'm just gonna move on. So those two examples are very different things, but like I said, the list goes on, and there's so many different ways things like this gain these attachments besides downright cursing them, that there's never really any way of immediately knowing what's going on with an object that's said to be cursed or why. That's why we do need paranormal investigators and sometimes people like me to come in and do what needs to be done, because if I'm dealing with an allegedly cursed object, but really it's just a little kid who has never crossed over, instead of destroying the object, I'm going to send them to the light and then properly dispose of the item if necessary. There's no one size fits all in the realm of the paranormal, and that's true across the board concerning everything we basically discussed, because so much of it is unseen to most of the population. Even people who see it, but they don't want to see it, so they won't. That's it. Oh, is that a shadow person? Oh no, I must have something in my eye. Now, let's talk about something many of you have been asking me through email, text message, comments, and all other ways that you can think of to discuss for years now, and that's the Dybbuk box. While I'm more than aware that there are many Dybbuk boxes out there, I think most of you will know which one I'm talking about here in this video. If not, stay tuned either way, because you're about to find out. So as I've just demonstrated by talking about random and seemingly benign everyday objects having bizarre supernatural curses placed on them that downright terrorize the people who own and or operate them, there's really no limit to what can be cursed, and there's no rules as to why something comes to be so in the first place. At least for the most part anyway, there's always exceptions to pretty much every rule. While there are more Dybbuk boxes out there, there's one that I think comes to mind whenever you mention them in this community, especially in recent years. It started with a man named Kevin Manis, who owned an antique shop and also who collected antiques as a hobby, who bought an old antique wine cabinet at an estate sale in Oregon. Not a large cabinet. If you've never seen it, it's probably about this big, I think. The woman who sold the box to Kevin told him that it had belonged to her grandmother, who was a Holocaust survivor. Her grandmother had been the only one out of her entire family to survive the atrocities, and she and some other people who were also survivors but unrelated to her were able to secretly make their way to Spain, where it's said she somehow acquired the box. When she emigrated to the United States, she took the box with her and warned her daughter never to open it because it was claimed to hold a certain type of demon known as a Dybbuk. At some point in the box's history, and this is up for debate as to when it happened, a Dybbuk demon was accidentally summoned and then trapped inside of the box a very, very long time ago. Why the grandmother bought it in the first place, knowing a Dybbuk was inside, is beyond me, but there are some who believe she is the one who accidentally summoned the demon and trapped it within the walls, so who knows. Kevin Manis bought the box despite the creepy story because honestly, he wasn't putting much stock into the tale he was told about its origins and why it should never be opened under any circumstances. As soon as he got home from purchasing it at the estate sale, he immediately broke the rules and opened it. It contained a few strange and seemingly random items, which included a wine goblet, a small granite slab with the word Shalom carved into it, a candlestick, a dried rosebud, 2 pennies from the 1920s, and the oddest item of all, 2 locks of hair bound together by cords. From almost the moment he opened the box, or at least from the very same day, strange things began to happen, and it started when Kevin left his shop to go and run some errands. When he returned, the shop was in total chaos and disarray, having been ransacked, but it was more like a large toddler had thrown a temper tantrum in the shop than anything else, because upon a closer inspection, he realized nothing at all had been stolen, and it looked more like someone just wanted to wreck the place. Considering the high value of many of the antiques in the shop, it was strange in and of itself that whoever had done it hadn't taken a single thing with them. Obviously, he hadn't left the shop open with no one there and asked the terrified clerk what had happened while he was gone. She claimed to have heard a disembodied voice screaming random curse words and that she had seen light bulbs randomly exploding and smashing against the walls all on their own. One small area of the shop seemed to be overwhelmingly full of the scent of jasmine flowers, and Kevin said about all of it, quote, "When I got back to the shop, I went to investigate. I remember heading towards the back and walking into what I can only describe as a wall of scent. It smelled like jasmine flowers. You could take one more step and not smell a thing, and take a step backward and be surrounded by it again," end quote. So what Kevin did next shocks most people, but we have to remember that this man was a non-believer or a skeptic at best, and he didn't believe in the legend of the trap Dybbuk, and he also hadn't yet made the connections between the ransacking of his shop and everything that had happened there to his opening the box, despite implicit instructions and a severe warning for him to not do it. He gave it to his elderly mother as a birthday gift, okay? He gave his elderly mother an empty and cleaned up Dybbuk box as a gift. Within 5 minutes of opening the box herself, his mother had a severe stroke. Though she survived, she was left partially blinded, and she told Kevin she wanted nothing to do with the box as she felt a sense of malevolence emanating from it. You think? He wasn't in the room when she opened it, but he was in the home, I believe. I believe that's what I read. Later on that same day, his mother had the stroke. People claiming to be from the FBI stormed into his shop and raided the place, claiming to be looking for something which they couldn't tell him what it is. They took some electronic gear and left without elaborating or explaining themselves at all, and without ever getting back to him about where his stuff had gone. Whenever he tried to call, they're like, "FBI who? Nobody, what are you talking about?" So that was weird. That was a weird avenue I wasn't expecting. Like, is he claiming that it was like the Men in Black and they were looking for the Dybbuk box? I don't know about that element of it, guys. If you do, let me know in the comments below. Kevin, still not really making the connection between everything bad and all of the strange things happening around him in the wine box, then gave it to his sister as a gift. Well, he tried to give it to her, that is, but she wanted nothing to do with it and told him she felt evil radiating off of it and an inexplicable feeling of dread and terror whenever she was in the room with it. She also told him that the doors would open on their own when no one was around, and I assume she saw this happen either while watching it from another room, or perhaps she had cameras set up where the box was. I'm really not sure. She just said it was opening and closing on its own. Eventually, the box ended up going to Kevin's brother and his wife's house. The wife was grossed out and said the box smelled like cat urine, while the brother insisted it smelled lovely, like the scent of fresh jasmine flowers. The wife didn't want it around, and eventually Kevin just gave it to his girlfriend. Now, if I can just interject here for a moment, I find it interesting that an antiques collector claims that he didn't believe in the legend associated with the box, but yet, even as a collector, and even with the box being a gorgeous, handcrafted antique wine box, was willing to pawn it off on everyone and anyone in his general vicinity rather than just keeping it on display in his own antique shop. That strikes me as really odd. Why wouldn't he just keep it in his shop then if he didn't believe in the legend and hadn't made the connections while he was gifting it to everybody? It doesn't make sense to me, but I digress. And the girlfriend also complained that there was something evil about the box. And along with everyone else he had tried to give it to up to that point, plus himself included, they all started having horrific and terrifying nightmares, and all sorts of paranormal phenomenon was happening all around them. After everyone gave it back to him, he decided to just put it in the basement for the time being until he can figure out what else to do with it. On the evening he brought it to his own home and stored it in the basement, Kevin had what he described as the most potent nightmare he had ever experienced in his entire life. In the nightmare, Kevin was stalked and then attacked by a hunched-over old hag. That same exact nightmare would haunt him for weeks, along with anyone else he had staying over his house in that time period. When he would wake up from those horrible nightmares, he said that he would find bite marks, scratches, and bruises all over his body. He described a typical experience of the nightmares by saying, quote, "I find myself walking with a friend, usually someone I know well and trust at some point in the dream. I find myself looking into the eyes of the person that I'm with. It is then that I realize that there's something different, something evil looking back at me. At that point in my dream, the person I am with changes into what can only be described as the most gruesome, demonic-looking hag that I have ever seen. This hag proceeds then to beat the living tar out of me," end quote. I'm just saying nightmares and dreams are different. Nightmares happen in the dream state, I guess, and it just, I don't know. It's one of those little things that, like, kind of a little pet peeve of mine when people call nightmares dreams, because, while technically they happen in the dream state, they are not dreams. Dreams are something you aspire to. Dreams are usually considered to be good. I don't know what I'm talking about. Once again, run, Gemma. In addition to those horrific nightmares, he started seeing shadow people all over his house, but they were indistinct and only visible in his peripheral vision. Guests to his home reported the same thing, and though it was all extremely odd and seemingly random, this is the point where Kevin made the connection from everything terrifying and bad that had been happening to him, all of the paranormal phenomenon happening around him, to the cursed Dybbuk box and the fact that he had opened it. He did what any normal person would do and put it up for sale on eBay. Still trying to get rid of it, eh, Kev? I see you. I see you for who you are. But hear me out, though, and I'm not saying that I agree at all with what he did, and personally, I would have never opened it to begin with, and even if I did, I would have tried to trap the demon back in the box and then donated it to a museum, or kept it hidden somewhere, maybe buried underground with clear warnings written all over it if it should ever be found, regardless of how much time had passed, to not open it at any cost, ever at all. But there are people out there who will pay a lot of money for haunted objects, even Dybbuk boxes. As some of you may remember from a few years ago, when people on YouTube and other platforms were ordering them off of the dark web and opening them in live streams. I mean, the stupidity is beyond me. No offense, I'm just saying. Honestly, and in my humble opinion, a really skilled white witch and demon expert could be the solution to properly maintaining the demon and getting it back into the box, and it would probably be a lot cheaper than the cost of all the trauma, but again, that's just me, and Kevin did what he saw fit by putting it up for sale on eBay. I give him credit though, because he was entirely transparent with whoever bought it, posting along with it details about what the box was, what it contained, and the horror it could wreak on your life. This is only part of the description listed along with the wine box, but it said, quote, "I would destroy this thing in a second, except I really don't have any understanding of what I may or may not be dealing with. I am afraid, and I do mean afraid, that if I destroy the cabinet, whatever it is that seems to have come with the cabinet may just stay here with me. I have been told that there are people who shop on eBay that understand these kinds of things and specifically look for these kinds of items. If you are one of these people, please buy this cabinet and do whatever you do with a thing like this. Please help me," end quote. Now, in his defense, after reading that, it seems he was looking for someone who knew what they were doing and who knew how to handle it, whereas I originally thought he was just kind of selling it. He also believed that the demon had to stay with him until it was contained because he was the one who released it in the first place. I don't necessarily believe that to be true, but one of two things has to be correct. I just don't know which one it is. Either the demon stays where it was released, or it is stuck traveling with the box. I think it's the latter, but hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a definite answer one way or another. I actually end up thinking it's a little bit of both. I don't know. If you have the answer to that, though, comments, please. In 2003, a man named Iosif Nitsky purchased the box for the very low price of $140 and allegedly got the box, the curse, the contents that were originally contained within, and the demon as well. The buyer was immediately plagued with all sorts of paranormal phenomenon from the moment he received the box. Electronics in his house would malfunction in bizarre ways or just stop working altogether, and no electrician he brought in could tell him what the problem was. Lights would turn off and on their own, objects would disappear from where they were left and end up reappearing somewhere else, completely random and nowhere near where they had been left to begin with. He said there was no one else around when all of these strange things would happen, so there was no reasonable or rational explanation for any of it. Strange smells would come from nowhere and vanish just as quickly into the same, and blurry shadow figures would lurk and loom all over and around the inside of his house. There was a sudden infestation of random insects that seemed to have come from nowhere as well, and he also began to lose his hair with no explanation as to why that would have been happening either. He quickly had enough and put the box up for sale again on eBay, where it was bought by the curator of a university museum who also collected religious paraphernalia. His name was Joseph Haxton, and he was from Kirksville, Missouri, and he didn't seem to have any luck with it either. Shortly after acquiring the box, Joseph claims to have started having many different health problems that he couldn't find any reason for and that he had never had before. There would be inexplicable welts, rashes, and hives that would appear all over his body, seemingly for no reason, and he suffered from constant coughing fits, extreme fatigue, persistent problems with his nose and nasal passages, an odd metallic taste in his mouth, and he even said that he would cough up blood a lot. He mentioned, too, that his house suddenly would smell like one of two things at any given time. Either it would smell like fresh jasmine flowers or cat urine, and it was almost instantaneous how he would go from smelling one to the other, seemingly in the blink of an eye and with no explanation. He didn't have a cat. He didn't live near jasmine. There was no explanation for either of those scents. Okay, so obviously he didn't have candles or incense or anything like that to the scent of jasmine, I suppose. He was very intrigued and knew from the beginning what a Dybbuk box was when he bought it and what the implications were, and so he brought the box to be examined by an expert in analysis of Jewish artifacts, specifically named Rebecca Ettery, who determined that the old wine box was a sacred relic, one that was specifically designed for imprisoning a spirit. Honestly, guys, and again, this is just me, but I don't think I would want anything at all having to do with the Holocaust or associated with it in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the horrors and atrocities that were carried out during that time in those places to the most innocent of victims, and for no reason other than the ramblings and possible schizophrenic, racist ideas of a madman, would be too much in and of itself for me to want to mess with any of it. But again, that's probably, I don't know, is it just me? I mean, taking the paranormal issues that I would have because of my abilities with objects like that aside, right? Not a Dybbuk box, but a Holocaust something or other. I don't know. Is it just me? Would you want something like that? I mean, if it's a family heirloom, that's a different story, but I just don't think I would want anything to do with it. Add to that the fact that it was a box that allegedly imprisoned a demon that was purposefully summoned. I just want to be interested in that. No thanks. Rebecca said of the box, quote, "The two doors on the outside open up just like the Holy Closet or Aron HaKodesh, a receptacle for Torah scrolls. And I saw round metal hoops on the inside of the doors that would hold scrolls. This particular size is used when going to comfort the family of the deceased. This insertion of the spirit was done deliberately and for a specific purpose," end quote. After gaining that new information from Rebecca, Jason Haxton kept the box, but he has since gone to all types of Jewish rabbis and other mystics in order to try and trap the demon again so that he could keep the box safe. He's had many rituals done in order to try and do that, and after it was said to have been completely done, he hid it away in a place where he never told anyone in order to keep it and the world safe from the magic contained therein. In 2011, he decided to write a book about his experience with the box and the box in general, calling it the Dybbuk box, and at one time he had a whole website devoted to it. Since then, though he mostly refuses to talk about it at all, not wanting to lend power to the already powerfully devastating entity contained inside of it, he did do one interview when talking about his mission and quest to contain the demon and maintain the box. He said, quote, "Being the caretaker of the Dybbuk box for almost 7 years, I've experienced a range of thoughts and feelings about it and its effects. Each caretaker who has passed the Dybbuk box on reports both relief and loss. All regret losing control of it. I decided not to act in haste and get rid of it like my predecessors. Instead, I've worked with scientists, Kabbalists, Wiccans, and those in the paranormal to diffuse the energy and put the artifact in a rest state. For the past several years, I've sealed it within an acacia wood ark lined in 24 karat gold, and it has indeed calmed the effects," end quote. Since then, and I'm not done yet, don't worry, the box has had many books written about it, many articles and magazines, and numerous websites devoted to it. It's also been the subject of many movies, and it's internationally known that when someone refers to the Dybbuk box, more often than not, they're talking about this particular box. Let's discuss the skeptics for a minute, and then I'll finish this out with updated information on where you can find the Dybbuk box today. So, the skeptics, my favoriteest people in the wide world, and skeptics just love me too. It's this little love-hate relationship we got going on here, me and the skeptics. Love them or hate them, they're a necessary evil in this business. Most of them will point out that there's been very little verification of statements made about the box, including the woman who originally sold it at the estate sale, who told the story of her grandmother in the Holocaust and where she allegedly eventually obtained it from. They say that some of the alleged witnesses and previous owners, like Iosef Nitsky, are impossible to track down and therefore must, of course, not be real people. Honestly, maybe the people are just tired of talking about it or have been so traumatized by their experiences with the box they don't want anything to do with it, and perhaps they think that speaking about it will in fact give power to it to torment them again. I mean, either of those could be true, but I just find it hard to believe that the people involved with the box are so desperate to add to its legend and legacy that they're running around literally making up whole entire people. The fact that Kevin Manis was an aspiring writer at the time he procured the box makes skeptics raise their eyebrows as well. Maybe he just put the story out there to see how much attention he can get for it, and then bring notoriety and attention to himself in that way, thereby getting a book deal out of all of it. Yeah. Then there's the usual dreck that comes from skeptics about anything that's said to be cursed or paranormal in nature, and that they claim people just want something to blame their unfortunate luck on. I'm sorry, do we need to go any further with the skeptics? No? Okay, great, didn't think so. Now let's talk about where the box is today and a little bit of how it got there. Jason Haxton kept the box hidden and didn't tell anyone where it was so that the world and anyone in its vicinity would be safe from the power of it for years. Eventually, though, he donated it to Zach Bagans so he could protect it and put it on display in his Haunted Museum, which is located in Las Vegas, Nevada in the United States. Zach would do anything but protect the world from the demon held captive inside, though, and during one of the Ghost Adventure quarantine specials, he opened it and another Dybbuk box and released it not only out into the museum, but out into the world as well. I found an entire article that goes over each and every reason why the original story of the Dybbuk box and where it came from cannot be real, based on the fact that it was obviously, for many reasons listed in the article, made in the 50s or 60s and could not have possibly been made any earlier. My question, though, is this: how does that prove there wasn't a demon imprisoned in it? It doesn't. So what do I believe could possibly be the reason for this discrepancy. I think it's a little more than a discrepancy, but we'll just go with that. Well, I don't believe the entire story is hogwash just because the box was allegedly, okay, made in the 60s. And I do think that there was a demon enclosed in it. Only the woman herself, meaning the elderly woman or someone else she knew, may have been the one to have imprisoned it in there. I have a very hard time with this one because it doesn't make sense to me that all of the experts involved, especially where Jason Haxon is concerned, could have missed the architecture of the box and the fact that it came from the 50s or 60s based on, I think it was the hinges. Not a single one of these extremely intelligent, best in their field experts noticed that. If you remember, Jason put another box over the original one, or so we thought, but could it be he couldn't get the demon anywhere near the original box, and therefore he or someone else created a replica from a more modern wine cabinet? Could be, we don't know, because Jason doesn't want to talk about it anymore. The poor man lost his hair. The poor man was sick as a dog. The poor man, the poor man, the poor man. Even burying it underground while it's inside another box and spelling it and charming it and all of these things, you still have a flippin' demon in your vicinity, in your possession, that does things to you. Not just physically, but to your soul, guys. So no wonder he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And he wrote a book on it. So pick up the book, the Dybbuk box. So yeah, actually, I think that's what I'm going for. That, you know, maybe he trapped it in another box. And until I find out otherwise, I'm sticking with that answer. It isn't that I'm being purposefully dense here, guys, but I've seen so much in my life, especially when it comes to strange paranormal entities, and more so even rituals. And I just don't believe the skeptics. And I believe that the architecture of the box could more than likely be explained easily should anyone have thought to ask the previous owners about it before making a whole article about how it can't possibly be true and trying to discredit not only the stories everyone has told who has ever owned the box, but their trauma from the ordeals they all went through because of the evil contained therein. Let me know what you all think in the comments. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed learning about all of this great paranormal stuff, and if you enjoyed hanging out with each other in the premiere. Please leave a positive comment, spread the love by sharing this video, subscribe if you haven't already, please. My subscriber count is going up so much and I'm so excited. Thank you all, thank you all, thank you all so much. I love and appreciate all of you from the bottom of my heart. Make sure your notification bell is turned on so that you get updates of when I am putting my stuff out there. If you haven't checked out my shorts yet, I'm still, again, a little awkward and uncomfortable, but I'm getting there, okay? And I'm doing several different types of readings and talking about all different kinds of random stuff. So I'm doing the best I can, guys. Please check those out. Please show my shorts some love, please, okay? I'm really excited for them. And once I get into the groove and like habit of like what I'm doing and when, I think I will see a lot more positivity coming into my short videos. I have gotten some trolling because of them, because, you know, I am awkward and uncomfortable and a little bit choppy and stuttery. So that's why a lot of you were like, why can't I comment on some of your videos? It's usually the shorts, and that's exactly why. Now, if you guys do not watch the shorts, if you have no idea, if you're not on my Facebook, if you don't see the comments in the community tab, the post that I put there, please understand that for the past maybe 3 years, Live Intuitive Oracle has been happening at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday nights. Myself and Ghost Dragon ZW, that is the biggest show I have here on this channel. I had to, due to personal reasons, I could not avoid it, move it to Friday night, but it's still the same exact stream at the same exact time on my channel. So Fridays, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time to 11-ish p.m. Eastern Time, I am doing Live Intuitive Oracle, okay, here on this channel. Please make sure to have your name on the list, and all you have to do that is come in to the stream and say something, say hi, what are you doing? I would like a reading, please, whatever the case may be, and I will pull one random card from a random deck and tell you what your next week or two is going to look like, or what's going on in your life right then. But please be sure to get in there by 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 10:30 at the absolute latest, to make sure that you get a reading. Because if you come in there at, you know, 10:45 and I only have 15 minutes left, I'm still catching up with the people who are already on the list, who have been in there all night or who came in before you, and then people get mad at me, and it's like, well, I can't do this all night. Like, I do have other things to do, and it does get pretty late. So Not sure what we're doing for Thursday nights yet, guys, going forward, because I cannot do weekday streams anymore. I'm left with Friday and Saturday. So I will be talking to Miss Lara and Sir Ghost Dragons about that. On Friday and Saturday nights at midnight, you will find Ghost Dragons EW. On Saturday nights, he is doing replays of my old videos, and you can see how awky and uncomfortable I was then too. In the description box, you will find links on how to donate to the channel, PayPal and Cash App. I really do appreciate donations, guys. They're how I make a living. So whatever you guys can do, I really do appreciate it. And that's my PayPal and Cash App in the description box. My Amazon wish list gift link, if you just want to send me a gift, I don't know, whatever the case may be, there's a whole list there to send in your encounters with the paranormal or supernatural, extraterrestrial, otherworldly, or for any other correspondence, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Guys, please check out the shorts. Please like the shorts. Show some love to the shorts, okay? I really, really do appreciate it. I know I'm forgetting a lot of stuff, but I've got a lot to do because when I'm filming this, it's Friday, and tonight is Live Oracle. Yay! I love you guys to the moon and back. Be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today, you are amazing. You are fantastic. You are awesome. You are perfectly imperfect. Okay? That is how you are made and meant to be. Don't let anyone make you feel less than, like you can't do something. If anyone's putting you down, do your best to get rid of them. Put them out of your mind and get them out of your life, because you are absolutely fantastic as a human being, okay? You deserve abundance and blessing, which is your birthright as a human being. And if nobody's told you in a while, nobody told you today, you're beautiful. I believe in you. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.